Good morning and welcome to the Gold, Ghosts, and Guns market report for today, September 9th, 2020. My name is Tom Luongo, and we have a lot to talk about. Now, I don't have any housekeeping this morning, and I got a lot to say, so I'm going to get right to things. All right, first thing I want to bring up this morning is President Trump has rightly identified what the real fight is, and he continues to confirm this daily, much to the consternation of even well-meaning libertarians. I notice that COVID has, in some ways, broken Mike Shedlock, and it's kind of sad. He's now focused so completely on foreign policy that he's convinced Trump is going to lose, and I don't know, whatever. But I find that the split is everywhere, and it has to do with COVID. And it's now breached, it's now morphed. COVID is now morphed into this culture war that is both the 1619 Project, as promulgated by the New York Times, which is completely ahistorical nonsense, and critical race theory. And Trump going out of his way to deny federal funding to institutions, educational institutions that teach this stuff, is one of the most significant things I've seen a president do in 30 years of watching politics. He's literally saying, I will starve Comintern. I will finally stand up and starve these frickin' commies who think that they're just going to be able to take taxpayer money and convert them into Maoists. No, that's enough. The American people do not want their children being taught this stuff on balance. It's tyrannical and ridiculous that we should even consider any of this in the first place. We send our children to school nominally to teach them how to read, write, learn mathematics, learn the basics of science, and all the rest of it, with not everything becoming a racial filter or a platform for racist ideology, which is what critical race theory is. Okay? Which is just communism repackaged. We are at the point now of struggle sessions. We are now at the point of them creating this moment where they are fully prepared in the next 38 days to unleash a cultural Marxist revolution on the United States should Donald Trump win the election. They continue to manipulate the polls to create this idea, this fairy tale, that Trump has no support. His approval rating is at unprecedented levels. His approval rating amongst blacks and Hispanics are at levels that literally cannot, that literally preclude Joe Biden winning this election through the Electoral College. We know all this. It's clear that this is happening. He may not win Wisconsin, but he'll win Minnesota, he'll win Michigan, he'll win Pennsylvania, he'll win Florida, he'll win Arizona. Gun sales in Arizona alone tell you that Trump is going to win Arizona. He has the potential at this point to have coattails, significant coattails in the House, to flip a bunch of Democrat seats where they've unleashed violence. And while the Democratic candidates locally will scream that Trump isn't doing anything to help rebuild their cities, the people know who were behind this in the first place. So, Trump moving against cultural Marxism and against critical race theory is incredibly important because it's standing up and saying, this is the true existential threat to our society. It is not COVID-19. COVID-19, there's a vaccine for. Yeah, we would like it to be our vaccine and not the dirty Russians, but there's a vaccine for it now. As I said in my podcast yesterday, which a lot of people missed the point of that podcast, that was for me to explain to normies who might actually tune in that these are the questions you should be asking to challenge your assumptions about what COVID-19 actually is. It wasn't for you guys. You guys already know that this thing is a freaking political operation. You get it. We've been talking about this stuff since March. But at a certain point, I have to sometimes reach out to the normies and just give them basic questions. or give you basic questions to use with the normies. You should be engaging people with the questions I ask in that podcast. And you can also morph those same questions into what's happening with the rioting. This is how you undermine this propaganda. This is how you undermine this thing. Okay, it's very clear that the intelligence agencies and the media and the Democrats and the Davos crowd are all lined up to try and create a military coup on November 4th. It's very clear that that's what's happening. Trump just announced he's pulling half the troops out of Iraq. Again, another very strong move on his part. Will not get, not get any play in the press. They won't talk about it. And if they do talk about it, it'll be in apocalyptic terms. ISIS is coming back. It's irresponsible. It's great. And the American people are like, thank God. Let's bring some troops home. Let's bring some battle-hardened troops home to help the president. And this is why they, then had to come out with the fake story about him calling, dead soldiers losers. And just keep repeating it over and over and over again. People are tired of this. But their goal is to exhaust you. Their goal is to make you not want to wake up in the morning and open up the friggin' headlines because, oh my God, what are they saying today? And because they know that there's enough people left in this country that still listen to them, that they can move the needle. But we'll get down into the last 20 days of this election cycle. And we'll see what happens. When people really start to form their opinions in the center as to who they're going to vote for. The guy who's doing away with critical race theory, who's trying to cut the funding behind the scenes to BLM, or the guy who's been encouraging them and can barely complete a sentence. I don't think it's going to be a very difficult choice. And I don't see Kamala Harris as being a strong enough vice presidential candidate for people to go, okay, well, I don't like Trump, but Harris will be acceptable if Biden actually can't perform the duties in office. I just don't see that happening. The bigger threat is management of perspective politics. Set the stage for a military coup, which goes all the way into February. Okay, next thing, if we move from there, from the plans of the Davos crowd in Europe to the next stage to the countervailing aspects of the Davos crowd in Europe, which is Nord Stream 2. For the first time in 5 years, I am now actually worried about Nord Stream 2. Report out of Sputnik yesterday had Merkel saying that she would leave the final decision about Nord Stream 2 up to the European Union, as opposed to Germany. That is her way of wiggling out from underneath the decision and the responsibility on the final aspects of Nord Stream 2 over the supposed poisoning of Alexei Navalny. I do not understand how the Russians have let it get to this point, other than to say the fix is already in and that this is a done deal. Now, Donald Trump has done a lot to undermine Merkel's position in Germany. And Nord Stream 2 is just the last. If they fail to stop Nord Stream 2, it will truly be the end of 60 years of anti-German Russian pipeline politics that goes all the way back to the Kennedy administration. 60 years. Okay. And that good friend of mine, Peter Spengler over in Germany, sent me a great article on just reminding me of how deep this goes, how deep this rabbit hole goes, and how committed they are to this. But I just don't think that Nord Stream 2 is going to be abandoned at the last mile while the American government loses its mind. Now, you'll notice this is bipartisan. Obama was against Nord Stream 2. He's against South Stream. This transcends the administration. But I know that Trump and Putin could easily sit down over this and work something out. He's being precluded from doing that. Okay? Poison pills are everywhere. We'll see what happens. But I'm not sanguine at this point because Merkel is... When I use the word feckless, I want you to imagine that picture of Angela Merkel looking like a hound dog. I tend to use this when I write an article about her for my blog. She's the epitome of that. Now, let's talk about Brexit, which I haven't talked about in a long time. But it's incredibly important to talk about Brexit right now because this morning we might actually be dealing with, and I'm sure that it's already happened in British Parliament, and it's because this is about 10 o'clock my time, and I'm sure that the act that has everybody, the bill that has everybody in a kerfuffle over in the UK and in Europe has already been presented. I'm sure it. I haven't watched it yet. I'll probably tune into Nigel Farage's radio show later in the day while I'm working on something else, because it seems to me that Boris Johnson and the Tories are going to ram through legislation that will be wholly unacceptable in any way and force a no-deal Brexit. It's called the Internal Market Bill, and everyone is screaming, and all the usual suspects are screaming that this bill is a violation of international law, which it's not. It's a violation of the devolution of powers in the United Kingdom, which it's not. None of those things. Those things are all opinions about what this bill will do to their future to Scotland and the EU's future relation, and Northern Ireland's future relation with the EU, and Wales' future relations with the EU. But it's not an attack on the devolution of powers. And if it is, it's very, very mild. What Nicola Sturgeon over in Scotland is saying is, because we want a closer relationship with the EU, this bill will preclude that from happening. It's an affront to the devolution of powers. Like, no, it's not. Move for independence. Become an independent nation, and then you can, sign up to be a satrap of the EU. Go right ahead. You just might find, though, Nicola Sturgeon, that the SNP is only popular because you keep pushing for independence, not because you actually are pro-EU. Just might be careful what you wish for, love. You just might get it good and hard. To quote Mencken. So this internal market bill will rewrite portions of the withdrawal agreement, which is fantastic because the withdrawal agreement sucks. But what it also does, and it rests upon Bill Cash's, and if you don't know who Bill Cash is, he's an arch conservative Brexiteer. Article 38, which states categorically, and was argued on both sides at length before it was included in the Withdrawal Act, that UK law is sovereign, and that the United Kingdom Parliament is sovereign. Meaning, the United Kingdom Parliament speaks for all of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland. And this gives them the latitude, in case there's no free trade agreement, agreed. Remember, all of the stuff in the withdrawal agreement is predicated on them actually coming to a deal on a free trade agreement. If they don't come to a free trade agreement deal, the whole thing just literally collapses. Like all the Irish border backstop and all that shit, all that stuff goes away. And the UK has, under the Withdrawal Act, which is an international treaty, the right then to write whatever laws it wants. And what Boris Johnson is saying is that we're clawing back Northern Ireland, that there's not going to be a separate border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK and England. It's not going to happen. There's not going to be a separate border down the Irish Sea. It's not happening. And this is unbelievably aggressive on the part of Boris Johnson. Further, he set a deadline for the EU of October 15th to agree to a deal, or all negotiations stop and the thing runs out. And they leave on a no deal on January 1, which is before the US election. Very important. Barnier had set October 31st, but then moved it back because Merkel told him to. No, move it back. We can negotiate up until the last possible moment. Of course, because Donald Trump will probably be deposed in a military coup, yada, 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 and then Boris won't have a leg to stand on. And they're still hoping that that's how they're going to get this done. What they don't realize is that they are going to open up a can of worms, a populist wave that is so immense, they're all going to wind up swinging from nooses. And I'm not saying that as an incitement to violence. This is just the way I see this playing out. But they are arrogant. And, well, actually, they're simultaneously arrogant and incompetent. If you listen to Ursula von der Leyen speak, it's like a vacuum. It's like air rushing into a vacuum. It's all I hear. There's actually no substance. There's no objects flying through that vacuum. It's not flying into that vacuum to fill it. There's no thoughts. There's just regurgitation. Same thing with Barnier. They just thought they could play hardball political games, run their Swedish national anthem playbook, and have the Brits believe it, buy it. Michael Gove and David Frost and Boris Johnson and the rest of them just said, look, we're not doing this. You guys are dumb. And they always do this. The EU always does this. They don't negotiate as a matter of principle. They state terms and then expect the other people to fold. It doesn't work if if you allow language into the Withdrawal Act, into the Withdrawal Treaty, which restates UK sovereignty. And then what? You didn't expect them to use it? Okay. Phil and Froggy take that lead. They're done. If Brexit happens on these terms, this is what the markets are beginning to sniff out right now. If Brexit happens on these terms, everything goes kerflooey. Today is very, very important. And by the end of this week, and by Sunday's market report, we may have a much clearer understanding of what's going to happen in the European Union vis-a-vis Brexit. Either all of a sudden there's going to be a massive breakthrough in talks to get to a no deal, to get to a deal. And the Brits have basically said, we want a Canada deal. You don't give it to us, we're leaving. And then you get no deal. That's it. Don't give them anything. And Boris Johnson, to his credit, has not given them anything in negotiations. And it's good that he's got Nigel Farage back there, gadflying it all and calling him a jackass and all the rest of it. That's exactly what Nigel's job is. You can never give Boris Johnson enough credit for holding the line. It's his job not to. It's his job to hold the line on the hardest of hard Brexits. Farage came out and said, well, I never thought the withdrawal agreement was any good in the first place. So this is a welcome move by Johnson. Surprisingly welcome move. So I'm good with it. That's all I need to know. All right. So let's watch the way this plays out, because if what the markets are sniffing out right now is that no deal Brexit is going to happen, and Martin Armstrong's heat map for capital flow has a big red hole around Europe while money is flowing into Russia, even though the Russian markets are under serious attack, and the United States. If that's the case, if the capital flow is flowing out of Europe and to the rest of the world, they know what's happening. They know that Barnier and von der Leyen and Keir Starmer and the rest of them don't have a leg to stand on here. And that's a very good thing for humanity, because these people need to be beaten. These people need to be broken. Period. Let's talk about gold. Encouraging action, if boring in gold this week. While markets are melting down, gold is holding last week's low, even though there was good pot odds at the downside. Not that we had, Not that we had, abnormal volatility last week, but we had a coin flip of breaking last week's low, and we still haven't done so. And as a matter of fact, gold looked like it was rallying earlier today. So that's a good sign. Matter of fact, I will check in on the price of gold while I'm doing this. Nope. So it's, as the day goes along here, we're seeing more deflation as opposed to inflation. So, but on the open this morning, things were looking good. The dollar is firming. It's back towards 93.5. The euro is below $1.18. And gold is, trying to build a new base here above $1,900. Here are your two levels of support on the cash market. Your futures premium still remains around $8, so it's still in contango, even though it's not supposed to be. And, this one bar reversal is still dominant. So gold is trying to form a base, and we've got a series of higher lows and lower highs. So something's going to break here. Whether it's this week or next week, something's going to break. But that's the way gold looks, but you have to consider that it's most likely going to break to the downside. Just because we're in a dollar positive, what looks like deflationary environment. Okay. On the same, and here's your very subtle signal that that's the case. This break here earlier in the week below $26 violated this low from 2 weeks ago. So now we no longer have a series of higher lows. We broke that low. Haven't closed below it, but we actually violated it. And that shows a little bit of weakness here. Maybe it's too subtle for words, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but since there's been no reversal signal here, but truth be told, we may be setting up for a longer consolidation period for silver, which is then also setting up for a break to the downside in gold. It's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen. The gold to silver ratio is holding relatively steady, but gold is starting to firm relative to silver. All right. Futures premium is at 17 cents this morning, which is strong. Continues to be around that. It's actually 17 cents in the pre-market this morning. It's around 20 cents right now. And same thing in gold. It's around $8. Hasn't really moved. Okay. So the state of the market is such that the market is still handicapping higher prices, but there's a deflationary spike going on right now. So let's see what happens. Bitcoin. I didn't get a chart to you on Sunday because I screwed up. So here's the chart this morning. And honestly, all the damage to Bitcoin was done in the overnight market Sunday morning, right? After midnight, once it turned into Sunday, when Saturday turned into Sunday. All of this trading was here. We had, solid bounce in Bitcoin here. So here's your very strong support line right below 10,000 at that 9,800 level or so, between 9,800 and 10,500. That's the area. That's the slog that Bitcoin has to bounce off of here. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, that's where you have to start watching for. Okay. And 9,200 was a previous area of support as well. But in reality, it's this low right here. That's the important one, 88.65. Okay. Now, that being said, Brent crude back below $40 today, right? It spiked a little bit on the in the overnight, and then it's again below $40. So the yuan is strengthening on improving numbers coming out of China, even though the dollar is firming against the euro and the yen. So we got cross currents happening. Also, the 10-year bond this morning is trading below 70 basis points again. It's trading back at 68 basis points. So there was a brief rally, a brief sell-off in the 10-year last week as everybody went to sell dollars. And now this week we're following back through with continued buying on the long end of the U.S. yield curve. So again, preferentially speaking, markets are moving into raised dollar mode. Okay. So this morning, when I was looking for a new chart to put up for you, or should I just put up, the wheat chart or cows, or, go look at the metals, I didn't see anything really all that impressive, that I hadn't shown you before in the strategic metals markets. I mean, copper is still holding above $3 a pound. Yep, at 302 this morning, but down 4 cents, but that's fine. Soybeans have broken out above 9.50 a bushel. They're well on their way towards $10 a bushel. Natural gas is consolidating gains at the 250 level. It's trading about 246, while oil is off below $40, Brent crude. Now, and I noticed that investing.com, for the first time I've noticed, has a 62% iron futures quote. I hadn't seen it. It may have been there in the last 2 years. I just hadn't noticed it. And it's not great data, okay? Because their contract for difference on iron futures, on 62% iron futures, is the only time, if there's any action, it's the only time you're going to get a daily or weekly, high, low, open and close. Otherwise, it's just going to take a quote off of the other markets and just plug that in. That's what all these dashes are, right? There's just no volume on their local contract for difference, and that's part of what when I use their data, that's part of what we're seeing, which again is why I use the cash market for gold and the cash market for silver. They're just much more liquid, and there's just more happening there than there is in the futures contracts for difference on their site. It's the best I can do without having a Bloomberg terminal, trying to get the best data here. Okay. And, previously I used to use the, publicly available Bloomberg data for 62% iron ore shipped to Qingdao. That data I don't think is actually available anymore. And that's only quoted once a day anyway, or at best once a day. So like, this is not a market that you're going to get tremendous data resolution on, okay, without doing a lot of your own work. And I didn't feel like spending 2 or 3 hours this morning looking for that kind of data. I just grabbed, a couple of years worth of weekly data, hoping that I would get something, something I can show you, which I could, which is that iron ore for the last year has been stuck below $90 a ton. And then after the Corona apocalypse in March, and then, there's some activity, and then we broke higher, and then you'll notice it's been on a freaking tear back to $130. And $130 a ton for iron ore, 62% iron ore, is high, historically speaking. This is not, oh, well, we're just back to, recovering within a bear market rally. No, $130 is high. Anything over $100 is all big deal. So we've got most likely huge demand coming out of China and spreading that around the world. And that we've also got cost push inflation. This is happening in the United States because the breakdown of trade between the US and China is creating supply chain disruptions like we're seeing everywhere else. So I wanted to show iron ore because iron ore, along with copper, along with nickel and a couple other, are good leading indicators of one of two things, either cost push or demand pull inflation. And you got to know your environment. So we're in a deflationary environment. The price of oil is rolling over. Therefore, cost for smelting and shipping and all that stuff is low. Baltic dry indexes, not getting off the mat here or nothing. But so something's not adding up. And my thesis that we're going to have cost push inflation on massive monetary stimulus seems to be bearing itself out. And iron ore is already $130 a ton. That was shocking to me this morning. Okay? So there you go. Up. Wait 5 minutes and the gold market completely changes. We're at 1953 in the futures market, at 1945 gold, and in the cash market. So the move in the Dow is the move in the gold market today. We're getting significant decoupling from the dollar. That's the important takeaway for gold and silver. It's really beginning to decouple from the dollar. It's just trading on its own merits now. The market, and the same thing is in many ways is happening to Bitcoin. Yeah, you're going to have downdrafts when there's extreme dollar strength, and you're going to get the market correcting, and may even correct in sync with the other markets correcting. That's fine, but then watch to see how it trades when everything else continues to change gears, because we're still getting a sell-off, right? Are we getting, so the Dow this morning is still, well, the Dow is up 300 points as well. So all right, never mind. Investing.com is not really updating properly as I'm doing this. All right, so let's move on. Last thing to talk about is the Dow. As of yesterday, the Dow closed right at 27.5. And, I noted on Sunday that we, went from a potential new all-time high on Wednesday to a potential one-bar reversal on Friday that they had to, paint the tape on to get a close that was not a reversal signal, and then we still get follow-through action this week. Matter of fact, we closed below this low. We opened below this low, and we haven't traded anywhere near it since the beginning of the week. Dow is not going to recover. There's not going to be a miraculous stick save on the Dow by Friday unless Trump announces some new package, unless there's some major announcement from the United States and Pelosi completely caves on a new stimulus bill, which I don't think is going to happen. I think it's just part of their strategic plan to blame everything on Trump. So I don't see that happening. I got contacted by Sputnik News over the weekend by my my contact there, Olga, and I sent her in yesterday my comments. Yesterday, or no, it was Monday. I sent them in to her on Monday about this very issue. Will they come to an agreement? Will the Republicans and Democrats actually come to an agreement before the election? And waiting for those to get published and let her know what's going on. And if she edits that, I will publish the full results like I did the last time on the blog for you guys to read, which apparently people really liked that one. I just threw it all up there. I was in a pissy mood that day. So, and I'll add commentary to what I wrote about once we're in. It may even be one being the Market Friday report for this week. We'll see. So there we are. That's pretty much it. So potentially game-changing events are taking place as I'm recording this. And this may sound stale by the end of the day, so watch it quickly. That's all I got to say. And watch UK Parliament. It may actually be the best friggin' show on cable right now. I know that's what I'm going to do right after I get done uploading this. So you guys take care. We'll talk soon. We'll talk Sunday. Be well. Let me cue the music. Not prepared. Where's the thing? No, the other thing. Ready? So we're going to cue the music. You guys be well. Keep your stick on the ice.